Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Voices of Forestry podcast. I'm your host, Seth Stephenson, the communications coordinator for the Arkansas Forestry Association. And today we're going to be hopping into our topic of timber sales. We've got a new Voice of Forestry joining us today to hop into that discussion. But first, I want to give a special thank you to this month's sponsor, Neeley Forestry Service. We're going to hear more from them later on in the episode. But for now, I'm joined by our new Voice of Forestry today, Ricky O'Neill, the operations manager over at Neeley Forestry Service. So, Ricky, thank you for joining us.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to come speak with you this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. We heard from J.D. Neeley here not too long ago, so we've got another one of you guys over here joining us today.
Right. Yep. Thank you.
Awesome. So, Ricky, before we hop into things, let's, as always, I know you've listened to the show a couple times. Let's get your background. Who are you? What do you do? What's your history here in the forestry industry?
Sure. So I've been with Neeley Forestry Service as the operations manager for about 4 years now. My primary role as a consultant there is to help manage the operations from including timber sales, which is our topic today, forest management, silviculture activities, and other things too, as far as like real estate and appraisal work. Prior to that, I was with Potlatch before they were Potlatch Deltic for 14 years in a variety of roles from real estate to inventory, timber forest cruising to a forester. Prior to that, I was worked at University of Arkansas at Monticello as a research assistant for Dr. Tim Koo. So I've had quite a long career of 22 years now of experience in the forest industry in Arkansas.
So you kind of run the gamut a little bit.
Yes. And so now I've been an AFA member for 23 years since I was an undergrad at UAM. So.
And I know you've worked pretty heavily with Max Braswell, our executive vice president, on a couple committees as well.
Yes.
So you've helped us out with some stuff. So
yes.
Awesome.
Yep.
So, Ricky, let's hop into the topic, if you don't mind, real quick. We've talked a lot about managing the land, getting a forest management plan in place, but we've never really talked about the sales aspect of everything. So I'm glad this is something that you reached out to me about and wanted to discuss. So I guess we should start at the beginning. When can you tell it's time to sell? Is there like a telltale sign, or is that just part of the management plan? What's a telltale sign for landowners?
Right. Well, good question. A lot of considerations go into that, and it's important up front for landowners to have a management plan, something to go by, some things to consider. And so, in that management plan, it really describes, not only things for wildlife or habitat management that you may want to do a thinning or some other kind of timber sale operation, but also markets. Some landowners are also want to take advantage of high prices for products. So there's good to be flexible in your management plan and take a lot of considerations. Whatever your goals may be, wildlife or timber income.
So now this is something I didn't think about, and just shows you how my knowledge in economics is horrendous. But markets do play a big part in this, and I've had discussions with folks over my past few years here at AFA about markets and good times to sell and bad times to sell. So I guess, do people need to be paying very close attention to this, or is there someone they can reach out to that can kind of give them the lowdown on where the markets are currently?
Sure. So a lot of landowners, some landowners try to do it themselves. They have a plan. They work with state agencies, the Arkansas Division of Forestry, other Arkansas Cooperative Extension. So there's a lot of public help out there, but there's also private, like us, forestry consultants that help develop plans and help consult landowners on when time to sell. There's also other foresters, there's other wood dealers, there's a lot of timber, loggers that help manage sales as well. So there's a lot of resources for landowners to consider, but the main thing is to have a plan and know what you want, how to execute your plan.
And now, if you want to learn a little bit more about the economic side of things, we did an episode last year, I believe, with Dr. Matt Pelkey on forestry economics. You can go back and take a listen to that. We'll also try to make sure and we link that episode here in the description if you're curious. But I guess this kind of plays well into my next question, Ricky, is so there are plenty of people out there. Forestry consultants specifically are a good place to start if you need help trying to sell your product.
That's right, yeah. Forestry consultants can help advise in your management plan market conditions, and they may change weekly, monthly, yearly, markets in where your land is located, the counties, the areas, the regions, and helps other products to the mills and to the loggers or the wood dealers that may be buying those.
So let's kind of, if you don't mind, just take an inside baseball look at a forestry consultant, is that person constantly looking at markets and stuff to, stay up to date with what's going on?
Right. Yeah, that's one thing a consultant adds to that is they have numerous clients in a lot of varied regions over the state, counties, areas. So they keep a close look at not only the markets but also the mill capacity, logging capacity, prices, which are very important, and then also some other things that may be happening around for those areas.
Okay, so there's a lot of different aspects to it.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, and that's one thing the management plan helps outline and takes in all those things into consideration. Whenever you're planning your timber sale or for your goals that you're trying to achieve.
So when you're discussing all of this with your forestry consultant, are they going to seek out the buyer for the timber? Is that kind of another thing that they're going to be working on as well, or how does that whole process work?
So right, yeah. So typically there's a couple of different ways really that timber sales are handled. So it's usually a kind of a lump sum or a pay as cut, which is a PAC type sale. And so those two types of sales are really the main way. And right now, pay as cut is probably by far the most numerous number of timber sales that are conducted in the state. So what that is the consultant, identifying up front what's the best way to sell, what's the best method of sale. And so they determine that, through your management plan. The pay as cut is typically the logger. Either way, the consultant is trying to negotiate the best product, the best price from loggers, from wood dealers, from a lot of different buyers, to make sure that you see not only the highest price but also the best logging job that you can receive. So,
okay, so there's there's so much more, because again, this podcast has been excellent for me, just trying to learn the ins and outs of everything. And when you said let's talk about timber sales, I just thought, okay, it's got to be a relatively simple process, but there's so much stuff that is involved with this, from, like what we were talking, looking at the markets, which obviously, that's a huge part of it. But then also negotiating 500 different other things with the seller or with the buyer, excuse me. So, okay. So I guess whenever I, as a landowner, decide, okay, I think I'm ready to sell, is that just a quick phone call to my consultant if I have a forestry consultant? Is that how we get this process kicked off?
That's how the process really starts that way. And then it takes time. It takes time to solicit all those buyers, look at the markets, look at what's going on with mill quotas, the deliveries, those kind of things, and he'll provide you, or she will provide you with the best recommendations, or say, hey, it may be best to wait, or let's try to go ahead and get this now because the markets are not changing, they're the same, or something's going on. So it really starts with those, giving the call and say, hey, it's time to, I want to do something. What do you think I should do?
So that soliciting process, is there like an average time that usually takes, or is that very dependent upon a lot of 100 different things?
It's depending on a lot of things. It could take just a few minutes. It could take a few weeks, and so it really depends on you talking to your forester and going over those parameters.
So that kind of falls back to the landowner just needing to be flexible. I guess it's better to kind of get that in early than wait and to call up the consultant, right?
That's right, yeah, and that's why having the plan ahead of time and having those options and discussing all those things that we're talking about. The consultant can provide you the best times what he sees, looking through his crystal ball. Hey, when's the best time to sell? When should we execute this timber sale? And so a lot of those considerations are in there, and it may be the consultant calling the landowner and saying, hey, prices are really good right now. I think we should, try to follow our plan and try to do a timber sale now.
So the consultant, I'm assuming, and correct me please if I'm wrong, that they already have a list of buyers that they just kind of start calling to say, hey, I've got X, Y, Z. Is that something you'd be interested in? How much would you give for it? Is
That's
that kind
right.
of the process?
Yeah. So there's a process. There's the verbal, hey, or here's the parameters of the timber sale. Here's the maps. Here's those things. Or there also may be more of a public type bid process where they solicit in the public, and they have a public bid opening, much like a real estate bid opening, but very similar. But there's kind of two different ways there. You can do a kind of a private solicitation, and you can also do a public solicitation of bidders.
Is one more popular than the other, or?
Most of the time, it's really private negotiated bid sales, much like the talking about the lump sum or pay as cut. Pay as cut is traditionally the most recognized or most used form of sale.
Okay. And is that the case for just here in Arkansas, or do you know if that's like a nationwide type of commonality?
Yes, it's very similar, especially in the South.
Okay,
yes.
in the South. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So once we've got our buyer, what happens then? Is it just simply getting the loggers out there to cut it and haul it off to wherever it needs to go? Is it that simple at that point? Does it get simpler as the process goes on? I hope?
Well, not necessarily.
Okay,
no,
great.
no. It's simple in the process. That's what happens in that process. But no, the first thing is you got to make sure you have a contract in place. Contracts are very important to have in place. Between the buyer and the seller, and it lays out everything from insurance requirements to prices, expectations. All those things must be, in place to make sure that, hey, it's good that we all trust each other, know each other, but it's good to have a contract in place in case there is some kind of dispute or some other kind of, something that, we need to figure out. So that's very important to have.
And that's just between the buyer and the seller.
That's right, buyer and the seller, and a lot of times, the consultant and the landowner will have an agreement in place as well to help outline their role in that process. And a lot of times the consultant is overseeing that process, overseeing the timber sale, making sure the contract requirements are met, but also BMPs or best management practices are being met. There may be other conditions in there. There may be some road work that needs to be done above and beyond normal BMPs for the state. So we got to make sure that all those things are in place and up front, and everyone understands what's going on.
So the contract, is that on the responsibility of the landowner or the buyer or the consultant? I guess who needs to be responsible for either writing that up or getting that ready to go to be signed?
Most of the time it's the consultant that does that. But of course, contracts are all contracts, attorneys are involved at some point, and so they may have an approved contract that they use for timber sales or other transactions. The consultant does.
Okay.
So.
I didn't want a landowner to get into this process and then have that slapped on him and be like, I don't know how to write a contract. So that's good. I assume that was probably the case, but you never know. So so once the contract has been signed, everyone is on the same page, hopefully at that point. Where do we go from there?
Well, it's time to start coordinating and figuring out when this timber sale is going to occur. And so, within that contract, going back to the contract again, these guys go out there and they start cutting. They're going back, but they're paying a price. They're cutting certain products, cutting certain specifications for those logs, and so they may be going to a multitude of destinations. And so it's the forester's responsibility at that point to make sure whenever that logger starts and cuts and merchandises and delivers logs, that all the contract requirements are met, to make sure they're not, hauling saw timber for pulpwood unless it pays whatever the price sets out. But you're making sure all that stuff's met.
Okay.
And so typically when timber's sold, it's delivered to the mill, and there's tickets, there's processes that documents from documentation in the woods, a loader sheet or some kind of documentation, writing down when trucks leave and when they return. Whenever you go to a mill and deliver the load, there's a ticket that's generated from the mill, and so those are delivered back to the woods. And so it's the forester's responsibility to make sure that all those tickets are in place, making sure the correct products are being delivered, make sure they're delivered to the right place, make sure there's tickets and all that documentation involved.
Okay. And does that paperwork then go back to the landowner eventually once this whole process is wrapped up, or does that stay with the forester?
Typically, what we do at our company, we require all those tickets to come back to us, to our office.
To you guys, okay.
And so once we get them in our office, we check all the load reports, we check all the tickets to verify the tons, the products, all that, and we compare it with our own internal inspections that we do during the operation. So all those come back to us. We get a check. We make sure all that meets is documented, make sure it's all reconciled, and then we send those to the landowner.
Okay. I know I've just having heard discussions in the past of timber security. Yes. I figured some folks might be interested to have that documentation for their records going forward in the future with stuff. So that's good that that is an option for them if they want it. So I guess at that point, it's at the mill. There's not a whole lot more the landowner has to do except grow more trees, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, Ricky, now that we've kind of rounded out the whole process, let's take a quick break to hear a little bit more from our sponsors this month, Neeley Forestry Service. Since 1972, Neeley Forestry Service has been a part of forestry in Arkansas, providing a broad spectrum of services including forest management, including timber sales and silvicultural activities. With 5 registered foresters, 2 licensed certified general appraisers, 1 state-registered apprentice appraiser, and 4 licensed real estate agents on staff, Neeley Forestry Service has the experience to help landowners make the best decisions for their land. To get in touch with them, you can visit NeeleyForestryService.com or call 870-836-5981. Neeley Forestry Service, managing forests from one generation to the next. We want to give one more shout out to our sponsors, Neeley Forestry Service. Thank you for sponsoring this month's episode. So, Ricky, we're getting close to the end of our conversation, but one other thing I wanted to talk to you about real quick is, I know you mentioned that landowners kind of need to be flexible. This is a long process that has so many factors involved, it's unreal. But is there anything else that you think landowners need to keep in mind while going through a timber sale process like this?
Sure. Well, I think one important thing to keep in mind is that they're having a timber sale, and so they're going to receive monies for this timber sale. Be sure they consult with their forester to make sure that how the funds should be handled, and make sure they work with their accountant or attorney to make sure that the funds are applied correctly or appropriately. There's a lot of deductions that they can take on different ways with that income to make sure that they realize that they are receiving money, and they work with a professional, outside the forester.
Okay, yeah. So, and that's something that you guys don't necessarily do. You just advise them to kind of go to another expert.
Yeah, we can provide some advice on how and what they should do or can do, or not necessarily should, but can do. But it's really important to talk to their accountant or their attorney whenever they're receiving those incomes for the year.
Okay,
so, yeah.
So all said and done, on average, and this may be, we can ballpark this if we need to, but on average, how long does a typical timber sale take from that first phone call from the landowner to, we're done, the trees are out, they're at the mill, you're good to go?
All that for the process on a normal size job, less than a month.
Okay.
Inside of a month, you're talking about. It may extend to 2 or 3 months, depending on market conditions or weather or those kind of things. But, you should be from start to finish, working on a logging job within a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a lot faster than I expected it to.
Well, yeah, and a lot of times, there may be planning ahead. They may plan now for next year's sale or something like that.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of variable on the time frames, but, if you just walked in today with a timber sale, typically you can, within a month, but there's a lot of factors that go into that,
Yeah. I mean, like we discussed, if the market's not in a good place, that may take a little bit longer. Yeah. But okay. So, but this is something that you can start more than just like a couple days or weeks or months in advance. You can start kind of planning the sale. How far in advance do you think?
In any number of years.
Oh, okay.
I mean, yeah, if you have let's say we started today, you have a 1-year-old planted pine stand, and you can go ahead and plan your harvest out, in 14 or 15 years from now.
Okay.
Go ahead and get that planned out ahead of time. That's a long time to plan because you don't know about markets and those kind of things, but there's really no time frame too short or too long to plan, harvest. It's good to plan rather than not to plan, because if you don't plan, then you could, not get your timber sale completed or done. So.
And I guess it would just extend the process out.
That's right.
Yeah. If it were to get done, just extend the process out.
That's right.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Ricky, I think this is kind of where I wanted us to get to here at the end of the episode. But is there anything else though that you want to talk about, or you want landowners or anyone who's listening to know about timber sales before we start wrapping up here?
I think the most important thing is really if you don't know something, ask for help. There's a lot of resources out there. Arkansas Forestry Association is a great resource. The Forestry Division in the state is a great resource, cooperative extension, a lot of private consultants, foresters that can help. But, a lot of things, just ask for help. Find someone that you can trust and someone you can talk to and seek help.
And that's something that we harp on a lot here on the show is, there are plenty of professionals out there who know a whole lot more than you may, or that I definitely know. So reach out to those folks. Ask. It doesn't hurt to ask a question. They're here to help. They want to see landowners succeed and do well to the land. So that's what they're here for. If you're not in Arkansas, reach out to your state agriculture department. I'm sure there's state forestry divisions or forestry commissions out there. Reach out to them But there are definitely resources out there for folks. But well, Ricky, I think if that's everything, I think we're good. Yeah. I want to say thank you so much for joining us today and for reaching out to me about this topic. This wasn't really something that I thought about. We'd done all the prep work for it. It just makes sense to kind of knock out this topic right now.
I just want to say I appreciate it. Thank you for having us today, and look forward to the next podcast.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, and we want to give one more shout out to our sponsor this month, Neeley Forestry Service. Thank you, Neeley Forestry Service, for supporting the show. And as always, we want to give a special thank you to some guy named Rob McCormick for the use of our theme song, The Same Love. That's off of his album, The Folkster. You can find more of his music on Spotify, and we'll also have a link to his website in the description of this episode. If you want more information about the Arkansas Forestry Association, you can visit arkforest.org. That's ARKFORESTS.org. And join us next month for a new topic, a new discussion, and a new Voice of Forestry.